You have also called recently for the primitivization of U.S. defenses. Explain a little bit what you mean by that.
Let me put it in nautical terms again. When I came out of the Naval Academy, 1.2 million years ago in the early 80s, I was quite good with a sextant. And I knew how to use a nautical almanac and use paper charts and navigate my ship. By the time I was in the middle of my career, Ian, commanding destroyers, being the commodore of a destroyer, like the scene that opens 2034, the novel, by that time, we didn't pay much attention to that. Nobody really used sextants. We were all GPS, like we all drive our cars around today. Today, the Navy is going back to ensuring every officer who stands a bridge watch knows how to use a sextant. It's a long way of saying we need a plan B because these exquisite systems upon which we have come to rely so deeply because they were invulnerable, fighting the Taliban or fighting Al-Qaeda, they're not invulnerable anymore. So we need still those exquisite systems, but we need a plan for when and if they are attacked. What's plan B? And in the novel, it's no coincidence, the first aircraft you encounter is a sixth-generation Joint Strike Fighter, which is forced down over Iran, mysteriously. By the end of the novel, you're watching an old F/A-18 Hornet, a pretty simple aircraft conducting the defense of the nation. So we need a plan B.
So I want to push you on this because, of course, when we talked about the Soviets in the day, we didn't do, in a sense, a plan B. We didn't do a missile defense shield that would be effective against nukes because we knew that there was no way to engage in mutual deterrence when you had that level of extraordinary offensive firepower from a nuclear perspective. We had mutually assured destruction. Now, when we talk about the Chinese, when we talk about offensive cyber capabilities, and the U.S. and the China and Russia to a degree dominating those capabilities, for which there really are no defenses, why don't we want to lean into that? Why don't we want a mutually assured cyber destruction where both sides are so capable that we know that, shipping out some sextants is not going to actually do it?
We 100% want to, as you put it, lean into this. And we ought to look back at the history of the Cold War and kind of re-engineer how we got from nukes going off in Nagasaki and Hiroshima to the very finely tuned systems and norms of international law and treaties dealing with nuclear weapons. There's an entire story there, a narrative that I believe, I suspect you believe, could be profitably applied in the world of cyber, because these systems are beginning to approach that level of capability. So that's, if you will, Ian, the strategic track. And that, I think, is work that is underway to some degree in think tanks and in policy papers, but it's gotten nowhere in the real world. And I would put that pretty high on my list in terms of U.S., China, and Russia relations. There is also a tactical side to this, which gets us back to sextants and old Hornets that can be pulled out of the boneyard if necessary. That is different than the Cold War. We didn't have that because we didn't have the level of risk to the command and control networks that we do now. The Soviets could jam a little bit. They didn't have the ability, however, to really go after command and control the way that China can today. So there's a strategic side and a tactical side.
So there are tactical nukes going off in 2034, and the ultimate taboo, thankfully something we haven't had to deal with since the end of World War II. What was going on in your mind when you said, I'm going there in this book?
First and foremost, it's the ultimate cautionary tale, right? Is to make the point that these nukes, tactical nukes, are in hand. Secondly, based on a lifetime in the military and as a very senior officer, it is not inconceivable to military planners that at one point or another we might use a tactical nuke. As you well know, during the Cold War, there were always war plans that included use of tactical nuclear weapons. The worrying strain, in my view, between the U.S. and China in this conversation is that one side or the other may decide that we absolutely need it because we're overmatched, and we'll use it at sea. And that will be a kind of barrier, a kind of a cap in the ladder of escalation. It is very hard to control the ladder of escalation, especially when you pull a nuclear weapon out of the holster.